to the actual element that the event occurred on. So say we wanted to change the text of the button itself. There's got to be a way, and we don't want to use query selector. There's got to be a way to find out which button the event occurred on, right? There's just got to be a way. So let's see if we can figure it out. So I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to just throw debugger in here to add a breakpoint. Ever used a breakpoint in a debugger before? It'll actually pause execution when it reaches that line so that we can play around in the console and have access to all the same variables that are in scope inside that function. So what happens when we click the button now is we should just hit this debugger line. So let's give it a shot. Refresh the page. Hit change text. Good. Paused in debugger. And we're on this source tab, and it shows us which line we're on. I want to switch back over to the console, though. So now my console is on this line right here. So any variables that are available to this function should be available to me. Now, we don't really have much in scope right now. But interesting thing about JavaScript, it does not enforce the number of arguments to a function. You can always pass in more than it asks for. And you can always pass in fewer arguments than it asks for, and it will not raise an error. Now, if you try to use those arguments and they're not there, you may have an error. But it will never actually complain about the number of arguments that you pass. So if it passes more than you asked for, you can always still get to them through the arguments variable. It'll create a local variable called arguments inside the function that you can use to get to them. And notice something. There is actually an argument being passed to this function, even though we didn't ask for one. And it is a mouse event. So it's always, remember, we're not actually calling change text ourselves, right? We're not putting parentheses on the end. JavaScript is executing that automatically when an event occurs. And it's passing along an argument, whether we ask for it or not. So maybe we can ask for it. I'll call it EV event. And then I'll unpause my debugger here by hitting this play button. I'll refresh the page again. I'll click the button. It hits the debugger. I switch over to console. And now I can type EV. And we see that it is that mouse event that's being passed in. So anytime you have an event handler, the event itself will be passed in as an object, as an argument to your event handler function. Incidentally, it will always be the last argument. Now, we haven't seen how you pass in other arguments to an event handler. Since we're not using the parentheses, there's a little trick to that. But we're not going to do it today. So what? Now we have the event. Well, guess what? Events have all kinds of properties. All kinds of good stuff. One of them is called target. And look at what the target is. It's the button. So ev.target gives us that button. So the event target is the element on which the event occurred. So if it was a button that you clicked, the target will be the button. If it was a form that you submitted, the target will be the form. If it's a link that you hovered over, the target will be the link. So we can use that. We could say ev.target, knowing that that's the button, and set it to clickety-click. Oh, sorry. Event.target is the button itself. We want the text that's inside it, right? ev.target.textContent equals clickety-click. Does it work? Let's unpause our debugger. Remember to refresh the page. Click on change text. Sure enough, I changed to clickety-click. So now we know how to get the element that the event occurred on from inside the event handler, which will become very useful. Get add dot, get commit. Change the button text when clicked. Very good.